message of love today with our co-host, John Tran. I'm really, really excited for our special guest that is going to be joining us today. His name is M.Unbroken. I found Michael on Instagram. Think the algorithms brought us together. I'm really grateful. When people show up in my path, something about him really spoke to me. Michael, you have this beautiful energy. I felt just from looking at your photo, and I felt like you did a great job of capturing maybe yourself and who you are, and we'll love to hear about you. But just in the message that you put out, and definitely I do a lot of men's work. I've worked with men a lot. I met John in a coaching program, and we started talking about masculinity, and we both have very different backgrounds, and we realized, we're struggling with the same issues, and not just us really, but the men we serve, and then turns out the women in our lives as well, and the people that don't relate to gender, like masculinity, femininity, anything that comes with healing this toxic masculinity we've seen in the world can come in all forms, like without gender. So Michael is, he's had a really, really powerful past, and he's now become a speaker and a coach, and he really speaks to these men as well. And John, where are you coming from today?
I'm coming from Houston. Thanks for accepting me.
There, I just sent you a request to join.
My wife jumped in here. We're about to fly back to New York today. All right, there we are. Great.
Hello, beautiful souls out there.
Yes, hi, welcome. A little after 12 somewhere in the world, and we're grateful to have Michael here with us. I've introduced him here. You guys have heard it all, so we can just jump right in. Michael, how are you doing today?
Man, guys, I'm so good. Thank you so much for giving me some space and time to share with you and your audiences, and it means a lot. I think that we're in this really beautiful time of transformation, and when we're having conversations like this, we can help change the world.
I love it.
Amen. Yes, absolutely. And Michael, where do you live? Where are you based?
So I'm all around the world constantly. Miami, Portland, Mexico. I'm constantly just on the move. I'm a bit of a vagabond.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, it just makes life more adventurous, more fun.
Absolutely.
Is that your book behind you, Michael?
Yes, it's one of them. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's amazing.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, I released a new one last Monday, just on a whim. I was like, you know what, new book, let's go right now. I wrote it in like 6 weeks and put it out.
Beautiful.
So we have to spread our word. We have to share our messages.
Absolutely. Let's dive in. Where do you want to start?
I don't know, man. Your guys' show. You tell me. I'm an open book. We can go literally anywhere you want to go. There's nothing off limits with me when it comes to this.
I want to make the home audience a little interactive. So if you guys are watching from home, type in where you're from, and one topic when the topic of masculinity comes into play, type in one thing that you want to bring awareness and light to today, and we'll dance with that topic today. One of the things that stood out to me when Ben connected Michael and I together in a group chat, I did a little research, read up on Michael, and your tagline is like, I help men that are survival of trauma, basically. And I've been doing a lot of work myself, diving into the trauma-informed journey myself, and I want to jump into trauma because I feel like that is the one thing that every human, whether you think you have trauma or not, we were, before we were born, we were in this nice little warm cozy sack in the placenta, and then we come out into this like fluorescent light bulb world, and we get slapped by a doctor and probably injected with some shots. So it's a probably traumatic experience for every person just from that little thing. And then you add in elementary school, middle school, college, all that stuff. So I feel like trauma is the root of all of our triggers, our fears, doubts, limiting beliefs. So let's get down with the capital T or lower T trauma.
Yeah. I think if it's okay with you guys, it might be helpful if we gave folks watching a little preface about who I am.
Yeah, let's
If
do
I
that.
if I can share my 3-minute elevator pitch about who Michael is, it might be helpful.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Because
That was
then people can
gonna be
understand.
my first question.
Yeah, perfect.
Like,
Because
why are
now,
you here?
yeah, exactly. So the elevator pitch version, so we're not here all day. My mother was a drug addict and alcoholic. She actually cut off my right index finger when I was only 4 years old. My stepfather, hyper abusive, never met my real dad. The majority of my childhood, we were homeless or in poverty. I lived with somewhere between 30 to 40 different families between 8 and 11 years old. When I was 12, my grandmother adopted me, which you'd be like, oh, that's a godsend, amazing. But I'm biracial, black and white. My grandmother's super old racist white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of. So insert identity
I'm from
crisis.
Tennessee. I might have.
Yeah, maybe Sunbright, Tennessee.
Actually, I have not. Wow.
Exactly.
I've driven back and forth all day
Five
across there.
500 people, one stoplight, one post office, and the funeral parlor. And so when she adopted me, I immediately just started turning to drugs as salvation. I got high for the first time when I was 12 years old, started drinking around 13, 14, got expelled from school at 15, but luckily got put into a last chance program. By the time that I was 18, I didn't graduate high school on time, had straight F's. I was running the streets. I was breaking the law, running with guns, selling drugs, running from the cops. My 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. I mean, that's the environment and the background I come from. And so when I was in my late teens, after I finally graduated high school, I was thinking about what is the solution for poverty? Why is my life like this? Why all the abuse? Why the trauma? Why the homelessness? And I was like, oh, it's money. Money must be the solution for all these problems. So I started chasing money. I made a promise to myself, set a goal. I'm gonna make $100,000 a year legally. This is very important, legally by the time that I'm 21. Fast forward a couple years, sure enough, I did. I ended up with a Fortune 10 company with no education, no anything. I willed it into existence, and I cashed my first check for $10,000 right around my 21st birthday, and that only exacerbated the problems of my life. And that turned into access, because money only brings out the truth of who you are. And I had done none of the work. And I found myself 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drinking myself to sleep, cheating on all of my partners, lying, stealing, whatever it took to get to the next place. And on my 25th birthday, I put a gun in my mouth. Fast forward a year later, I'm 26. I'm laying in bed one morning, again, 350 pounds, smoking a joint, eating chocolate cake, and watching the CrossFit games. Now, if that's like not rock bottom, I don't know what is. And the next day, I went in the bathroom and I'm looking in the mirror at myself, and I said to myself, what are you doing here? What is happening? Why are you stuck? Why is the world against you? Why are you not showing up? And as I sat there staring in the mirror, like listening to the water drip through the faucet and like tears wash down my face into that sink, I was taken back to being 8 years old. The water company, they'd come and they shut off our water. And imagine that, America, a place where we're given these freedoms and these liberties, and we're so poor we can't afford water. And so I would take this little blue bucket and I'd walk across the street and I would literally steal water from our neighbors to survive. And as I looked at myself in the mirror that day at 26, 20 years later almost, I knew for the first time, man, you're not keeping the promise to yourself. That promise when you were 8 years old, you said, I'll never live a life like this. And from that moment, I started asking myself, what was I willing to do to be the hero of my own story? What was I willing to do to have the life that I wanted to have? And that started with this framework of living within this moniker of no excuses, just results. And it put me on this journey where almost 11 years later, here I am talking to you guys today.
Wow, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your truth with us, Michael. And I love just the power and vulnerability of your story. Just not holding any punches and just talking about no matter what really stood out to me is no matter what you've been through, no excuses. What are the actions you're taking in the world, and what are you going to do about it? Right? Yeah. You can be victim to it, or you can move forward. And that really moved me as well. Someone who's had PTSD, I haven't had nearly the trauma you did growing up. But I know the power of being in that victim mentality and doing the work, right? Just showing up for your life. And I would love to know, what was the thing that had you make the shift, right? Like, you can hit rock bottom. I hit rock bottom a lot, for years before I did anything about it. So for you, what was the thing that made the difference?
Yeah, I think it was just a series of rock bottoms, just this unbelievable, vicious 6 years, really 26 years of pain and suffering, where I was just always looking at and measuring my life and just thinking about, like, what am I doing, right? Because I was trying to fill that gap, that intrinsic hole that was within me. I was trying to fill that gap with things, with stuff, with drugs, with women, with drinking, with all of the things that bring no real value to your life. And finally I just looked at it and I go, well, what the hell else are you going to do, man? At this point, you've put yourself in this position where you can't go any lower. After this, it's death. After this, it's you are probably going to be either homeless or catch some kind of very traumatic, not like, I'll probably die from some kind of overdose or drinking myself to death, or who knows what happens. And so I wish I could say it was just one. Right. I wish I could say there was just this one occurrence, this one thing that happened that kind of catapulted me into change. But realistically, it was this ongoing experience of not showing up for myself, of letting myself down, of hurting myself physically, mentally, emotionally. I was self-sabotaging, words I didn't actually have then. And I was stuck and I was just blaming everyone else. I was a victim. Right. And look, by all means, I deserve to be. I don't really know that many people who have had experiences like mine. And so it's really easy to leverage those things and go, this is my life, this is what happens. But truth be told, like, I think about this and I go, man, there's no way that living this life is sustainable. And finally, just one day I looked at it and I said, do something, stop making excuses, stop being, like, really just effectively calling myself a loser, right? Show up.
Wow. Powerful. I just want to
So
share
powerful,
that.
you kicked us off of Instagram.
Yeah.
We're coming back on. I'm inviting you guys back on. It's just one of those
Cool. Yeah, I
technical
see
things
it.
that happen.
Enjoy.
John, keep going. All right, here we go.
Yeah. What I caught from you is, I really like the fact that you made a shift to be your own hero. So I think as a victim, we're waiting for some hero to come rescue us and save us, or we switch roles and we want to rescue other people, when really you saying, like, being the hero of your own story is so powerful, because we all have that power to be our own hero, to really, like, hit our own rock bottom and rise up with our own tools and resources and beliefs in ourselves. So can you tell me, I'm curious, like, how did you pull yourself out of this and go through that shift? Like, was there something that you found, books, learning, tools?
Yeah, John, I mean, that's such a great question, because people, and this was my experience too, it was very much like, well, if no one's going to come and help me, I'm just not even going to bother. And I would spend all of this time just loathing, just no goals, no ambition, no hope, no dreams, no anything. I was just so succumbed by the idea that I was worthless. Because think about this, if you spend your entire childhood, your formative years, your developmental years hearing, you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you're not capable enough, this is no wonder you're poor, no wonder your dad left you, if you cry, I'll hit you harder, boys don't cry, the whole toxicity of everything. And then you compound that with teachers saying, oh, you just have learning disabilities, and people not believing in you. And then suddenly now, you're an adult and you're like, how did my life get so screwed up? Well, I wonder. And so now I'm in this position where I looked at my life and I knew one of two things was going to happen. I was either going to die or I was going to change everything. And that process started first and foremost with acknowledgement. I looked at my life and I said, okay, I understand that bad things happened. I acknowledge it, but I'm not going to give those bad things the power and control over me anymore. because that's all they've ever had. That's all it's ever been, is me being in that position where I don't have control over my life. And with that, I made this declaration to myself. Again, no excuses, just results. Now, John, to answer your question, that started by me putting myself in this position of having to do this really in-depth work. And what that work means is it first started with going to therapy and getting serious about it, because I had spent a long time and tens of thousands of dollars going to therapists and telling these people what I thought they wanted to hear and then giving them my money. Like, if that's not the definition of insanity, I don't know
There
what
you
is.
go.
And so
Yeah.
it started there. Just go to therapy, just have a real conversation, because the truth is, in 8 minutes, you guys know more about me than people who I had known my entire life, because I kept hiding, I kept running, I kept not being this person who was capable of vulnerability. And so part of it was, can I become vulnerable enough, not only with the world, but with myself, more importantly, so I can talk about the dark things, so I can talk about the bad things, so I can talk about the abuse and being molested and get that weight off my shoulder, because it felt like this brick. It felt like I was carrying a ton of bricks with me everywhere I went. And because of that, I just couldn't seem to sustain. And so in therapy, I decided to make another decision. And that was, I'm going to go deep into personal development and self-help, because I mean, I knew I'd been reading all these books. I've been an entrepreneur for a very long time. And I started to notice the similarity that all my favorite entrepreneurs had in common. And that was that they unequivocally, they loved themselves, and unapologetically, they showed up as who they are every single day. And I was just wearing these series of masks where it was like, John, if your favorite thing on planet Earth was, like, I don't know, deodorant, right? That's just what comes to mind. I'd be like, oh my God, dude, I love deodorant so much. It's literally my favorite thing on the planet. Ben, you could be like, man, I love John Mayer. I'd be like, dude, John Mayer is my favorite thing of all time. I had no identity. I had no idea who I was. I had no semblance of understanding this Michael who sits in front of you today. But I did have this notion, this idea within me. I felt like I was supposed to do something great. Something within me said, you're supposed to do something amazing. But I knew that if I couldn't bridge that gap of having no idea who I was, then I would never be able to sit here and have this conversation with you. And so that process began by me basically establishing this understanding that I am going to frame and create the caricature of the idea of the person that I want to be. And then I'm going to move towards that person every single day through doing immensely uncomfortable and difficult things, until the point in time in which that caricature then becomes my reality. And so today, sitting here in front of you, I am the version of myself that I always knew I could be. Now, that version of me is always changing, growing. It will always expand. It will be different tomorrow. It'll be different after this conversation. But it started with acknowledgement. Every bit of everything that I'm able to be in my life right now started with going, you know what, some bad shit happened to you, man.
Michael, it's really, really resonating with me. And if you're watching, thank you all for being patient and for listening. And I hope it's resonating with you. Please just drop us a comment and let us know what's hitting you right now. I'd like to reflect a few things to you, Michael, if I may.
Yeah.
One of the things, when we were talking earlier about, like, what was the shift? Because, there's so many guys, there are people that are out there in pain, and at some point that I think our pain becomes as familiar and almost more comfortable than the discomfort of actually growing and changing and stepping into our heart, stepping into our purpose. It's cliche, but it's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And I think some of us who have had such dark pasts tend to swim in that darkness and get stuck in that as this story. And one of the things I love is that you just kept saying, well, first of all, it's like, I've got to die or do this. And still, some people choose death, right? But when you start to notice is, I think we as humans innately want to live. And as you were hearing people around you who were loving themselves, and that almost being foreign, but something it sounded like you're craving. And I related to the people pleasing. I became an actor on a whole life of trying to, like, yeah, all right, great. But then losing that identity, right? And then the one thing was, but who do I want to be? enough of this, and that pain became enough to where you just start taking those actions relentlessly and standing in the discomfort. And so I always ask, my clients, like, well, what do you want to choose? You could stay in this. What's more uncomfortable, the pain of this or the discomfort of stepping up, stepping into your life for once, showing up for yourself. And sounds like also you found a way to be of service, and that's just lights you up, that you are Think Unbroken, that you have this great book and this brand and this life, and you live unapologetically now. And you are that thing that is, I'm loving myself now.
Yeah. And here's what's really
yeah,
interesting, Ben, like at 27 years old, I looked at my life and I was like, I don't know what self-esteem is. I don't know what it's like to be kind to myself. I don't know what it's like to be in connection with men in a non-violent way, or, for lack of a better term, that conversation about our number of sexual partners and the money and the things that don't matter. And
like
so
how to have a
much
conversation with men in a loving way that isn't violent or isn't,
dude,
like,
I was best friends with my best
other.
friend for more years than I can count, and we hugged each other like one time, and that was at a funeral. You know what I mean? And to be in connection with men at a different level now is really palatable and practical in my life, because it gives me mentors, it gives me guidance, it gives me conversations like this. But we're so terrified. I think about this when I'm coaching my clients, when I'm coaching, or if I'm writing a book, or if I'm doing a live, or if I'm helping someone navigate something in their life, I'm constantly thinking about this idea that change only happens when you make change happen. You're not going to Disney moment anything into your life. Nobody's going to magically just show up and then one day, boom, things are good. Doesn't work that way. And we're sold this lie in society that if you just try for a little bit, suddenly things will be different. But there's no overnight successes. There's 10-year overnight successes and 30-year overnight successes and a life worth of overnight successes. And we want the easy solution and the quick fix, but the truth is it's not coming. Anytime you shortcut this, life is going to be hard. Now, look, let me be very clear with you guys, because this is really important. I still have my struggles. I still have my battles. I still have to do the work. I still have to show up. I still have to have my coach and my therapist and my journals and my exercise routine and all of the things that led me to this moment. And I don't know that this journey ends. I don't know that you're ever in this position where you're not in healing. And that holds true for a lot of people. You look at statistically, and this research is outdated. I think that it needs to be updated, but you go look at the ACE survey, this thing done in the mid 90s with Dr. Folletti and the California Center for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente. They found a correlation between childhood trauma and adverse experiences and adult ramifications, like health disorders, like sexual proclivities, like drugs and alcohol, like suicide attempts. And you go, okay, well, no wonder we get to this place. If 83% of adults, and this is a statistic again that I believe needs to be updated, have experienced childhood trauma, why is childhood trauma the elephant in the room of American society and most Western societies? We sit in this world where people work themselves to death, where they kill themselves every day for things that they don't need, where they hate themselves, where when they pass by the mirror, they can't stand the reflection, where when they're in a conversation with other people, they can't be vulnerable, where you show up every single day and you just think about, man, I hate my life. You go, well, yeah, of course you do. Look what you come from. Look at this background. Look at the fact that vulnerability is faux pas now, and it's become this really interesting like social narrative wherein we step into vulnerability, and you can't have a real conversation with your partner or your brother or your coworkers, or you're told when you're a child, if you color outside of the lines of the box, that you don't fit into the construct. And then you sit here and you take these prescriptions and you dive into realities that don't exist, because it's much easier to watch Netflix than read a book. And you ask yourself, how did this happen? And this is my life. This is all the things that happened to me. And at 26 years old, looking at it and going, this can't be it. This can't be my reality, because I believe, look, people think this is nonsense when I say it, but I believe we're all destined to be able to do something great. And it's our moral obligation to tap into that. And to get to the point that I'm making, I know I'm going very long here, but I'm trying to get somewhere. The reality is that the reason why people don't create change in their life, because again, I said change only happens when you make change happen. It's no Disney moment. The reason why people don't create change in their life is because they're terrified of their own potential. Because all we've ever been able to understand about ourselves is stay in the fucking lines.
Amen. Yeah, so true. And I love, John, I want to hear what you have to say too. What stood out is that 83% of adults experience childhood trauma, and it's the elephant in the room. You know, growing up in the South, where no one talks about anything emotional, or anything, any dirt in your family, and yet most of everyone's experienced trauma. And so, just thank you for saying that. Just getting the conversation out in the room, like, just let's talk about it. And that's why I'm, man, it's fire. It's good. This is beautiful. Please, again, if you're listening, let us know what's resonating. I'm hearing, also Female Enigma saying it does need to be updated, and it's not all from childhood and parents, right? Obviously, we have experiences along the way, and the blame isn't all on our parents either. I'm guessing that you're probably a parent and understanding if you're watching right now, and we know, like, this is parents can do our best, and we're all human, and we're all going to experience trauma. That's how we learn a lot. But it's do you let your trauma control your life, and then are you trying to just, like you said, it's about the Disney moment. It's not going to happen for you. You've actually got to go up and out there and do the work. And the people you see around you rising and things during these times when everyone's falling and collapsing and crumbling inside of mental illness from pandemic or whatever it is, those people are just doing work. Like you said, I love that you're like, it's still for me, a day at a time. I still got to do this. I still have rough days. And Michael, what really stands out to me, what I'm moved by, is just how you just show up. You continue to show up, and you can continue to not only speak your truth, but act on that truth. It's only a reality when you take that action.
Yeah, I mean, what else do you do? Because there's it's easy to blame the world. It's easy to blame your parents. If anyone can blame the world, it's me. You know what I mean? And that holds true to everybody. Everybody has the ability to just blame the world, to blame their parents, to blame their surroundings, to blame their poverty, to blame that thing that happened when you're 18. Like, I get it. It's fair. It's fair. Like, it's a hard truth to hear. It's fair that bad things have happened to you and your life sucks and you're stuck. But then there's a moment in which you have to understand something. In order to get to where you want to go, you have to understand how you got to where you are. And that means you have to make meaning of all of these experiences. And when you make meaning of those, then you can apply this ideation of, okay, if I can turn any problem into a mathematical equation, that means that then you can create a solution. One of my mentors, Tom Bilyeu, taught me this. I was on a call with him not that long ago, and he said something fascinating, changes the way that I think about the world. He says, turn any problem into a mathematical equation, you can solve it. And what I didn't understand was that so much about life is about creating an analytical understanding of framing things within a binary way, meaning it's a yes or no, right? Eliminating, and that it's not to say there's not room for gray area, because there is, but eliminating a lot of the gray area. Why? Because when you create and frame things into a binary statement and within a frame and context of a mathematical equation, you eliminate the space for excuses. Why? Again, if we want to get to where we want to go, we have to understand how we got to where we are. And so now in this moment right now, let's say you've come to this place where you've made acknowledgement. You've looked at your life and you said, I'm ready to do what's next. Well, then guess what? Now you're out of excuses. Now you don't get to say, I blame the world, because eventually you're going to have to come to this place where you understand that everything in your life from this moment forward is on you. Nobody is coming to rescue you. No one's going to save you. More importantly, the hard truth, nobody cares about your problem. Nobody cares. I'm sorry. Nobody cares. Why? There's 8 billion freaking people on planet Earth with 8 billion individual problems, and no one has time for you. However, that said, that doesn't mean people aren't here to support you. That doesn't mean people don't want to see you grow. But the only way that those people by proxy are going to come into your universe is by first you creating that universe for yourself. Because if you are not willing to step into that place of doing incredibly uncomfortable things to move into being the person that you want to be, people are not going to want to be in connection with you. That's just human nature. And so you got to stop blaming people. They have their own things to deal with. And importantly, you have to stop blaming your parents. Like, I get it. It's easy to blame them. They screwed you up. They screwed me up. But then you look at it from that, like, generational trauma is just that. It's generational. You look at these experiences that you've had and that they had and that they had and that they had, and it's learned behavior. And eventually you're in this position where that learned behavior then is faced with making a declaration in a binary way. Either I will or I will not continue it. And so in that place, if you want to move into self-love, self-worth, value, reaching your goal, showing up, understanding your wants, needs, interests, values, personal declarations, motto statements, the person, the framework that you are, you have to say, I am willing to do whatever it takes.
Love that. I want to share what Revolution of the Mommies commented on Instagram. She says, I feel like vilifying blame, excuses, or saying don't complain is kind of toxic, too simplistic. We have to not be afraid to examine our feelings. And I hear what you're saying, Michael, and I agree. I resonate with a lot of what you're saying. You do have to look at problem almost like a math equation, and there will be a solution. That's the masculine approach, is very logical. But at the same time, I know that there's a balance, the yin and the yang, and the feminine side of every human. All three of us, man, we have that feminine side where we are emotional bodies. And I think what Revolution of Mommy was saying was, like, you got to feel your feelings. And I love what you're saying. And it's not one or the other. It's got to be an and equation, because
I think it's both.
Yeah, it's both. If you don't feel it, you won't heal it. If you don't accept it,
I love it.
Yeah, if you don't accept it, it's just going to linger, and you're going to meet the same partner with a different name, different face the next date you go on. Yeah. So you've got to feel it in order to heal it. So don't be afraid of the feeling bodies. Don't be afraid of your emotions, Revolution of the Mommies. Feel it, but also have that logical sense of, man, this is happening to me because this person was doing their best with what they were taught, and it's just not aligned. X plus Y does not equal W. Moving on to the next one. You know, it's an equation. It didn't add up, and we're moving forward, and we're getting out of that equation.
And John, I'd love to coattail on that, please. Vulnerability is, in terms of being okay with the emotional capacity that you have as a human being, and being able to look at yourself in the mirror, that is directly in parallel with what I said about acknowledgement. Because you cannot possibly acknowledge dark things that have happened to you unless you're willing to be vulnerable enough with yourself to let down the wall to have that reflection. And that was the hardest thing that I had to learn, because growing up, it was, if you cry, I hit you harder. If you're a boy and you get hurt, put some dirt on it. You know, all that toxic masculinity pieces, but then the abuse side of it. And societally, then it's a lot of it, and I see it changing, which I think is really powerful. Even from the female perspective, they would look at, oh, you're crying, you're emotional, who are you? Like, what kind of man cries? And I go, that is so incredibly poisonous, because now you have this huge number of generation of men who are emotionally inept, who are social robots, and we wonder why they don't show up. So many of us, why don't you talk to me? Why don't you show up? Why can't you let me in? Because that's the only thing I've ever been told, is I'm not allowed to. And that applies to women too. This is where it's getting really bad, because, and everyone as a whole, I don't even want to just gender classify. It's everybody is told, don't be an emotional human being. And then what happens is you're faced with making these emotional decisions, and you don't have the tools to do it. But stepping into the emotional side of vulnerability with yourself, in conjunction with creating frameworks, that is how you start this process. And getting emotional with yourself, learning that play, like, that's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, is to be able to cry. to be able to talk to men, to be able to have a conversation with a partner about dark things, right? And I think that unless you're willing to feel the bevy of emotions, anger typically will like run the gauntlet for you. And so, you know, I had this really beautiful experience once. I was talking with one of my clients, and we were in this coaching session, and we were stepping into understanding personal power, something that is well more in depth than I think people even understand until you recognize their capability. And they broke down, and to watch him break down and cry, and he said, man, that's the first time that I've cried in 10 years. And I go, now feel it all, right? When we get off this call, go and talk to your therapist about this. Go talk to your partner about this. Go explore this emotional capability that you have, because without the emotional side, the rest doesn't matter. You'll end up going on the same dates every day, John.
I want to thank you, Michael. Ben, you want to read what? There's been some questions on IG, and then I'd love to do a round robin to answer female enigmas questions. They're really good questions, like how do we lead? Go ahead, Ben.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to make sure we leave enough time to talk about Michael's new book that's come out too.
Yes.
So we do have tools, and we're talking about this. So obviously, you all can reach out to any of us at any time. And we'd be happy to talk further with any of you. Every person's individual, obviously. But Female Enigma said, you know, how do you three practice this skill in your social circles, not just in your groups or workshops, casual times, hanging out, but like with your friends, not just your followers. It's easy to preach to a choir. When you're not around your woke friends, what do? Do you call out your friends around the toxic masculine? Does that turn into a conflict?
Let's round robin that, Ben. What do you think?
Cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
You first. Go.
For me, I am so much my heart. I cry on camera. I share that with everyone, my friends, anyone around me knows that's who I am. So that's just, I am unapologetically that, and that's how I lead by example around people who are woke or not. That's just who I am, and I just lead unapologetically. I talk about my feelings because that's who I am, and I don't hide from it, and that's how I lead everywhere I go. Yes, when I was in the deep south after my father just passed, I'm staying at a hotel for the week, and there's staff all trying to look good, and a lot of wealthy Southern people, and I'm trying to avoid breaking down. You know, like I talked about my feelings. I just say it. You know, someone just died. I'm having a really hard time right now. You know, it's okay to cry in public, to show people. I talked about it in gas stations. I got pissed off because people weren't wearing masks, and I said, you know, I just came from the fucking ICU watching people die. Could we maybe all think about like putting a mask on together? You know, and I step up and I say things, and I let myself get angry when a boundary's being crossed. And when someone else, you know, I have a friend who used to send me pictures of women with large breasts. He thought it was funny. And he was a bandmate. And I had to say, like, and I will call him out. I said, dude, this is not only like not serving me or my marriage or our friendship, but it's also not serving you and your relationship with women, because this is just serving all the crap that feeds how we think about women and how women feel like they need to be something different. So do me and yourself a favor and don't send this to me. And he stopped, and we're closer friends now, and he learned something from that, hopefully, you know, but I just remind him of that. So that's where I go with people, and kind of how I stand in the world. What about you, Michael?
I love that. I think that's super important. Here's what's going to happen in life. As you grow and change, people around you will move away from you because they're going to want you to remain the same. Jay-Z has an amazing quote. I didn't do all this growing to stay the same. And that to me is so much of the nomenclature about the way that I exist in the world. And just by proxy of being within that forward momentum, a lot of those people just natively have fallen away from me. And I'm okay with that. My circle is very small. My circle is very tight. And those people know exactly who I am, what I'm up to, what's happening in my life. There's level of connection and vulnerability that exists within that, where I don't even have to worry about the other side. You know, whether you're woke or not, I don't care. How are you showing up in your life? How are you being? How are you acting? How are you for real? Right? When we're one-on-one, when we're private, when we're having a conversation and human connection. And so typically, now again, this is because I keep my circle very, very small. I don't run into that happening. it's very rare when it does. And when it does happen, when this toxicity may show itself, I'll call them out. The other day, perfect example, I was having a conversation with a new friend, and someone who's now come into my life through being involved in public speaking and things of that nature. And he goes, Michael, he's a guy, he goes, Michael, I love what you're doing. I have so much respect for you. Like, I think that you're a world changer, and I think that you are going to be one of the most powerful people in the world about trauma. And then he follows it with no homo. And I was like, are we still doing this? Are we still doing this? Are we still doing this? And so instead of like freaking out on him, which would have been really easy to do, because that doesn't help anyone, I simply said, hey, man, you know that we can be in connection with each other without the precursor of evaluating our emotional capacity based on our sexuality. And he goes, I never thought about that. And I go, well, now you have. Because sometimes all we have to do is just frame things so people understand that there's another way. And so when I do run into that, I just go, what's really happening here? Because that's a social construct, man. You grow up in the city, you grow up in the hood, people will say that shit. And I'm just like, it doesn't bring value to anyone. I have amazing friends in my life who are gay, lesbian, a part of the LGBT community. And I go, man, I don't like, however you live your life over here, like, let's just be in connection. Let's just be human beings together.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm really resonating with this question, so thank you, Female Enigma, for bringing it up. Recently, just randomly, so I was in the rave scene for a long time, and I used to DJ and had like this group of friends that we just would go out and drink and do ecstasy and get really fucked up. Sorry about the F-bomb there. And I've been on this path to really clean up my life, and I haven't hung out with these friends in so long. And literally last weekend, a few friends were like, let's go dancing. And I ran into all my rave friends. And I think Female Enigma had asked about that again. And it was like, how do you lead around friends that are not your woke friends? And I used to have this division mindset of like, well, these are my woke friends, these are my yogis, and then these are my non-woke friends. But in all essence, it doesn't serve me to label anybody as woke or non-woke. And for me to be just aware of where I am, it's almost like in the morning, if you have a dog or an animal that's awakened before you have woken up or your alarm, they will make sure you wake up. So I think if we're in this space of leadership, if we are in that space of being aware of our emotions, being aware of not playing out these toxic patterns over and over, we can lead with being healthy around each other, hugging our friends. Like we were amongst our friends, and I said, man, I really miss you guys. And I just spoke vulnerably. And I've never told those friends that I love them, because we would just go out and get really wasted. And I said, man, I really miss you guys. I love you guys so much. Like, you guys are such an important part of my life, of like me growing up and just having fun during this dark period of time. Like, I love you guys. And speaking my truth around them, not shaming them for being on their journey. I don't know that they're not woke, and I can't judge that they're woke or not woke, but I can be just like the sun. I could just rise like the sun and just shine. And if they are sleeping, if you're shining bright, the people around you will wake up. And that it's just how the sun works. The sun doesn't turn into a moon because everything's dark around it. It just shines, right? So speaking my truth. And then I did notice there was a moment where we were all hanging out and the conversation went into kind of like this misogynistic or gossipy vibe. And it really isn't about calling someone out and making them feel shame about doing this. I think a lot of times it's easy to fall into those traps of gossip or talking shit or just being like a dude, like the locker room talk. And what empowers each other and what we're here to do is to really call each other up. Instead of calling you out and making you look like a fool, I'd rather call you up and see you in your highest place and say, hey, brother, I know your heart is like hurting from this. Like, man, I love you and I support you. And that, what are you grateful for right now about this? So I think this friend was talking about a past relationship and talking bad about a girlfriend or something. And like, how can I turn this around? Like, how can we all see the beauty in this scenario? And it's really about calling each other up, and that's brotherhood, friendships, changing that locker room paradigm into like, we're now in the Super Bowl. We're not in the locker room anymore. We're going to play big, and we're going to be supportive, and we're a team for each other, and we're a team for the collective to really like go in and play with our hearts out. So that's how I see the leading. And for me, it's really staying on all the time and not slipping into those gossip roles. And I like to ask questions too. Like I really like to get curious on why someone's feeling a certain way, but I'll just ask in a way that empowers them to make that decision and say, shit, I didn't mean to say that. What I meant to say was this. So yeah, getting curious on why people are feeling the need to resort to lower vibration will help them. Without me rescuing them, they get to answer the question and rise up themselves. So thank you, Female Enigma, for an awesome question. That was really powerful for us to share that.
And I know we just have about 90 seconds left before we lose Michael. And I just want to say, lead with love. If you just love people, you could break barriers with that, opening your heart. Michael, is there something, John, and thank you for all that beautiful wisdom that you shared, and Michael, for yours, just for being with us in this space, and for everybody who's been watching and listening. Please share this. If it resonates with you, please follow, tag, subscribe, because you help get this message of love out and healing versus all the other toxic stuff we see. Michael, what would you like to say to leave people with today? Anything you want to say about your book, your experience, anything you want to leave us with before you go?
Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate both of you for giving me the space and the platform to share on your stage about what I'm doing with ending generational trauma. I'm obsessed with it. It's literally the only thing I care about. It's why I work 100 hours a week. It's why I don't do anything else with my life, because I just don't want anyone else to have to go through what I went through. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as a collective, we're going to have to come together. You, as you may or may not recognize, are a part of my mission. You now are a part of my team, because every time we have this conversation, we expand. And every time that we expand, we create change. And on an exponential property, when added to this, creates the change that I'm seeking to make in the world. And while I recognize that I'll probably die, because this is a very long timeline before we heal and actually effectively end generational trauma, I continue to move forward every day. So thank you for giving me the space and the time to talk about it. I mean, I'm M.Unbroken everywhere on all the social medias. I just released my second book called The 8 Steps to Healing Your Inner Child. That's everywhere. Audiobook, paperback, digital, the whole nine. I wrote that book because I was sitting and I was having a conversation with my clients, and they were like, how do you do this inner child thing? And I was like, well, I created a mathematical equation in it where it became a step-by-step binary way that you step into it in my own journey. And I said, maybe if I give you this, it might help. And so it actually started as this really in-depth conversation. And I said, I'm writing a book. I'm just going to make another one. And so 6 weeks ago, I sat down and I wrote the book. Came out Monday. I didn't even tell anybody about it. I was just like, hey, guess what, guys? Book, because I don't believe in waiting for people to make your dreams come true. You have to go and do it. And most importantly, the most important thing that I'll say, though trauma may be our foundation, it does not have to be your future. But the only way that's going to change is you have to remove this idea that there's a Disney moment, that there's somebody coming to rescue you, that somehow you're going to get magicked or secreted into what's next. You're going to have to do some hard, grimy, dirty, uncomfortable work. And in that, your life will be different.
Man, I love that. Wow. It's like trauma is like the dirt, and we were seeds being planted, and we're just popping out of the dirt. So I love it, man. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Love you guys. Yes.
Love you
Welcome
guys.
to the revolution. We're all part of it now. Thank you so much, Michael. John, would you like to close us out?
I would love Michael. Michael close us out.
I was just gonna say, we like to put our guests in the hot seat any way you'd like.
Yeah,
I'll closing.
Yeah, I'll just say this: if you close your eyes for a second, and you think about the world that you live in, you have full control over everything that's next. And you're going to be faced with a hard question. And that question is, what are you willing to do to be the hero of your own story? Thank you, guys.
Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, guys.
All right.
Take care. Look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for spending your time with us today.
Of course.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
All right.